Go ahead and begin.
One of the most discussed topics in the sports world is the one-and-done rule in the NBA. The reason this is such a hot topic is because it was not until 2006 that this rule took effect, preventing recent high school graduates to enter the NBA draft. As we can all imagine, the majority of high school athletes are against this rule, and they have a right to be. Players should be allowed to enter the draft once they have finished high school. The NCAA, NBA coaches both from high school and college, along with the players, have a stake in whether or not this rule should continue to be enforced. 2005 was the last year that high school athletes were allowed to be drafted. Up until then, players were allowed to take whatever path they wanted to get to the NBA. There were many players who had success coming out of high school, such as Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. But there was also a negative side to this, such as players like Jonathan Bender and Sebastian Telfair, which most likely none of you have ever heard of them because they failed out of high school. So this created a dilemma for the NBA. Do they continue taking risks with young kids and maybe ruin their future, or do they create a system that allows the players to more mature over the next year? So they created the one-and-done rule, which requires all American basketball players to attend 1 year of college before entering the draft. So let me ask you a question. When you graduate from high school, do you have to go to college to get a job? No. So why should these kids? Actors, baseball players, hockey players, and soccer players all can become professionals straight out of high school. So why is basketball so different? AAU coach Nick Irving says, look at tennis players and golfers. They turn pro early too. It's like, why basketball? Why are you putting the stipulation on them? It's not right. It's also the players' lives, so they should have the choice to do with it whatever they want. Golden State Warriors forward Kevin Durant says, you should let these kids make a decision however they want to. If they want to come out of high school, it should be on them. You can't control everything, so if they feel as though they're ready, that's on them. They want to make a decision on their life, that's on them. If they don't get drafted, it's on them. Statistically now, players at a young age are even better than they were before. If you look at your handout, you'll see a chart with data collected by sports journalist Colt Kesslerine, and it shows you that since the rule was implemented, which is the black line, there's been almost a 20% increase in young players being drafted at a young age. And you can flip that back over now. And according to USA Today writer Nicole Auerbach, since the rule was implemented in 2006, 57 one-and-done players have been drafted, which, based on these numbers, the NBA obviously can't be too worried about the players being too young. Coaches also dislike this rule. They feel as if their hands are being tied and they have no time to build a team, since every year they're just getting the best available freshmen, and they leave the next year and hopefully they get good freshmen again to build a winning team the next year. Players also feel as if they're not getting an education, which can lead to many of them thinking, why go to school and get an education when I'm just using it as a stepping stone for the NBA? Ben Simmons, the forward for the Philadelphia 76ers, who's also a former one-and-done player, says, they say education, but if I'm there for a year, I can't get much education. Looking at it now, I don't even know what I learned financially or just being a person at LSU. I think I've learned a lot more this last year being in Philly and being a pro than I did at LSU. So, how does this problem get fixed? Well, first, it has to go to the commissioner, and he proposes the idea to the NBA board, saying they should let players be drafted out of high school again. You can give it a 5-year testing period. Once the 5 years are done, you go back and look at how successful it was. And if the decision is no, to say that players can't be drafted out of high school anymore, then the system still needs to find a new way of being worked. But this most likely won't happen because it worked in the past, so it should work now. If players continue to be forced to go to college for only 1 year, it could result in them leaving to play overseas and make money playing for a year to gain draft eligibility, rather than having to balance school and basketball while absolutely making nothing. This could also cause worse competition in the NCAA and lower TV ratings, because lower talent means not as entertaining, which could lead to less money being brought in by the NCAA, which means the heads of the organization make less money, and we all know they don't want that. High school players should be allowed to go straight from high school to the NBA. Players and coaches dislike the one-and-done rule. It has shown it many times to be very ineffective, and there once was a solid system of drafting high school players before the rule was created. If you're not convinced by the points made, then I encourage you to go home and research all you can over the topic and try to prove that the one-and-done rule is good for basketball. Fair warning though, you most likely won't be able to. Hopefully after this, you realize the one-and-done rule needs to be abolished for the good of basketball.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Voice cracking.
All right. At this time, too, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to open the floor to any questions related to Micah's topic, whenever you're ready. Do you think there's anything to be said to encourage them to at least go for 1 year, if not to glean everything that they could from it, from the example that you gave? Obviously, he said he walked away and didn't really say that he took anything with him. But is it not yet an okay idea to give them the opportunity to say, hey, look at what you may miss if you're not given the opportunity to at least check it out before you jump into the NBA? What are your thoughts on that?
Are you saying that you still give them the option to go to college?
Well, not merely option, but maybe still saying that maybe if we still had the one and done, that maybe the reason is to encourage them, hey, this is, I know you might not get a whole bunch out of it, but at least take a taste of what the opportunity is like. Is there anything to be said in a positive light in that nature?
Not really.
Okay, how so?
You can still give them the option, but it's, many players have said in the past how they feel like they've been cheated, or there was even a documentary done a couple years ago on high school or college athletes, and they felt like they were the exact definition of indentured servant, where they go to the school and the school makes money off of them while they're just maybe learning a couple things while they're there, but then just moving on the next year.
Okay.
And even a lot of players actually, but the person I quoted, Ben Simmons, as soon as his season was over, he actually dropped out of school and got ready for the draft. So he just did the semester of school he needed, and as soon as the season was over, he left.
Okay. Thank you.
Taylor?
Do you think it's smarter for them to attend before or after, considering the fact that they could be injured and not able to play basketball after?
I think it's up to the players. Like, everyone has a choice. I mean, if you get injured, it probably will happen any time in your life, and everything happens for a reason. So, if in a player's situation with, you think, I mean, like if it was me, I have like no money right now. If I had a chance to make several millions of dollars next year, I would definitely take that instead of going to college. Bobby?
Okay, so seeing as how they probably won't change the rule anytime soon, what could players do as like when they're going to college?
Well, as I said at one point, it could lead to players leaving to go overseas to play. So, it's like I said, it was American players that have to be required to go to 1 year college. So if you leave America after your high school season, you can go across season, play for a year, and then enter the draft. So you wouldn't have to go to college. But actually, it was kind of funny today, as I was preparing the speech, I got an alert saying that they think in 2020 they actually are going to remove the rule. So.
I know you, oh, so did you see me?
Yeah.
Sorry. I know that your speech isn't focused on international players, but do you know the difference of what their contingencies are if they would like to go from high school to being players here in the
They can go
United
straight
States?
from high school.
They can, okay. Thank you.
That everyone?
I think so. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.